Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We have performed an inquiry into reality. We are born and we see a world of forms. And these forms become our reality. We start to get entangled in them, and it becomes a life of what's called a life of samsara. A life of samsara is whereby we naturally assume that the world of forms is to be pursued, and it's lovely. It has lots of joys and good things, and the world is your means to understand the whole picture. In fact, all you and I really have is the world. Isn't that true? All we've ever had was forms. Everything we do is done through forms. Everything we pray to is forms. Every idol, every worship, Ganesha, Saraswati, Durga, Ganesha, Krishna, Rama, these are all expressions of one intelligence. And this intelligence, we can't just say, oh, that's here is one, because that's not good enough. We need to break down, what do you mean by all that is here is one? And what the rishis have discovered is how to arrive to that oneness, how to arrive, as in how does your mind see through oneness. So this means oneness. What does oneness mean for you? What does oneness mean if you say oneness? What does that mean? Like right now, all that is here is one. What does that mean for you?
Being
Connected, okay? Okay, so I get from that more all-pervading, that's what I got, like everywhere.
Everything comes from a single source, Adhisthana.
Everything comes from the Adhisthana, the causeless cause. That means nothing caused it. It is the final thing. So this is the difference between Buddhism and Vedanta. Buddhism is excellent at presenting you what they call dependent origination. That means what is the nature of forms? And so they will look at these forms and they will recognize these forms actually have no final substance. So they will show you, do a great job at showing you that every form is reducible to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Even this conversation is just a bunch of words. If I say to you hello, it's just made up of 5 letters. And the word hello is just the sounds. So anything you look in this world, you will find it's made up of many, many parts. Now, where our thing becomes a little bit of a struggle sometimes is that we take this whole thing, which is made up of parts, and we attribute things onto it. We attribute likes and dislikes onto it. And so that thing now becomes an investment for me to keep in my life, never really allowing me to look at the constituents that make it up. And therefore, I miss out on all of the parts that make it up. I just stick with the general superficiality, the surface level, and that is good enough for me because it makes me happy. And that is understandable, but the mind, adhikari, comes to a point and says, I want to look deeper through and through this. So now Buddhism shows you the dependence of all things. But then look at this. If you just go on reducing things one after the other, reduce, 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 then what ground am you and I are walking on? What do I stand on? What do I take refuge in? What do I look forward to? What happens, how do I live? Because even my sense of happiness is mithya. My compassion is mithya. My empathy is mithya. Everything is mithya. So it can create a little bit of a distance because the world is mithya. Desire is mithya. So I end up separating myself because the world is there to entangle me. But is the world really there to entangle you? It can if I don't have the right methodology. But the world is there to equally untangle us. The very thing that keeps us bound is the very thing that can release us. This is how it is. And thereby, Vedanta provides a simple analysis, and it starts with Chandogya Upanishad chapter 6 between Shvetaketa and Udalaka, father and son. Imagine having a nice father who is a wise man. That would be so lovely, right? He has the knowledge of the truth, and you don't know it. And the son or the daughter is born within a family of Jnanis. That is a lot of punyam that you have to have. So this was Shvetaketu, was a son who was born to a father who was a wise person. He knew the reality. And Shvetaketu was a brilliant student. He learned about 12 or 13 years at the Gurukulam. And often, in fact, most of the time, there's a top student right at the top of the class. He can recite any Veda, any scripture, any verse. He can just impress you. And you would think, wow, what an amazing child. So he was at the top. And he was taught very well. And so after his tutelage, he came home to his father, and he's carrying this 12-year worthy pride that was being developed through 12 years worth of pride. That's a lot of pride, 12 years worth. So he goes to his father, and his father is kind of noticing a little bit of this pride. Okay, and he says, this is, I've got to talk to my son here, because my son is like, I can recite this, and I'm the top of the class, and I am the best, and I am so bright. And this was annoying the father, because the father is also in touch with ethics. And so the son is naturally young and, wants to show himself. And so the father questions him, and he says, hey son, let's sit down. Has your teacher, who's brilliant, have they taught you that knowledge? Once known, everything becomes known at once. What kind of knowledge is that? There's no such knowledge. A knowledge that I know something, and once I know it, at once I know everything else, even the unknowns I know, even the unheard I hear, even the unseen I see, even the untasted I taste, even the untouched I touched. That's not possible, because the logic is, if I know chapter 1, I don't know chapter 2. If I know science, I don't know biology. So what kind of knowledge will I have to know that at once I know the substance of all knowledges, of all things that are yet to be seen, yet to be heard, yet to be experienced, yet to be tasted, yet to be touched? So, although he was proud, he also had enough humility to say, Dad, there's no such knowledge. Most kids would stop there, right? Storm into the room. But no, he didn't. He says, Dad, what kind of knowledge is this? I'm curious. And so the conversation began. And Udalaka, the father, started the conversation using a pot and clay, a traditional example in Vedanta tradition. And he says, if you look at this, what is this, son? And the son says, this is a pot. Yes, I know it's a pot, but what is it made out of? It's clay. It's made out of clay. So it's a pot, it's a clay pot. Now, it's interesting because we speak like this. We say, I want a wooden box. A wooden box. Please give me a wooden box. And I will give you a wooden box. So now the wooden seems to qualify the box. The wooden seems to be the adjective, unnecessary, wooden box. And the box seems to be the noun. Same thing here, clay pot. So now, if you reverse the relationship and you look at the box without the wood, there's no box. So we can see, dear son, how our language starts to percolate throughout society, showing us how we get caught up. We think we need the box, but without the wood, there is no box. So how should you really call it then? If you go to a store, you want to buy, suppose you're clever, a philosopher, you go to a store, and you want to show your skills to the store manager, what would you say instead of wooden box?
I want wood in the form of a box. Like that?
You're a strange customer. I want boxy wood, please. Okay? So this means In other words, without that wood, there is no box. Without the clay, there is no pot. So this means that throughout this entirety of this thing, which we give a name and form, there's no two things here. There's only one clay. But owing to the difference between another kind of a clay pot, we have to give it a name. And yet the substance is the same. So the name and form is contingent on the substance. Without the substance, there is no name and form. The name and form is borrowing from the substance. And while the clay is appearing as a pot, the clay remains free of the life of the pot. Otherwise, if the clay took on the attributes of the pot, then the clay could not obtain as a different kind of a pot. So therefore, it means that if we take that hierarchy all across the board, in that sense, satyam, the clay, is free of mithya. So what's the relationship? It is a satya-mithya relationship. Satyam pervading mithya, giving substance to mithya, giving possibility to mithya, giving life to mithya, giving everything to mithya, all the while satyam remains free of the life, of the attributes, of the conditions, of anything that happens to mithya. I drop this, the name, it's the death of mithya. It's the death of the pot. The clay remains exactly the same while it was alive. In fact, there's no question of clay being alive or dead. That's in reference to the pot only. So alive, oh, you're so alive right now. That's only in reference to you being the pot. But the substance always remains the same. Therefore, there is no such thing as death when you start to analyze reality. Death only happens in a state of change of form, name and form. But whatever name and form it changes into, through and through it, the same substance remains. Nothing has changed whatsoever. And therefore we take this example and now we apply it into this world. You can't stop here. We look at anything. Let's look at a tree. And you go, okay, I see a tree, name and form. Tree is made up of molecules. Molecules are made up of atoms. Let's stop there. I can still appreciate the tree. Can I not? I'm not discarding the tree. I'm not getting rid or insulting the tree. I'm just seeing through and through the tree. Now, what about energy? A big word in spirituality. Energy. Energy is mithya. Energy is subject to change. You can have big energy, slow energy, atomic bomb worthy of energy, spiritual energy. These are all subject to change. Variances. The most common thing that people start to insert in Vedanta is energy. I'm here to tell you now, energy is just another scientific phenomena. Whether you're talking subtle energy or physical energy like atomic bomb, that's physical energy, or subtle energy, it's still energy because it comes and goes. It's subject to intensity. It's subject to frequency. It is subject to types of energy. Still mithya. Therefore, reducing reality like a tree, we come to atoms. Now Vedanta takes over and says, hey, that's not the end. There is a final building block of this universe. And appreciating this final building block, you come to the final understanding. That means it's no longer the words of the scriptures, it is now your direct understanding. And what is the final building block? The intelligence because of which the whole atoms is intelligently organizing to form molecules, molecules intelligently organizing to form the next constituents upwards, all the way until you see a seed. And inside that seed, you don't see anything except powder. And yet, there is an intelligence inside that seed to give rise, to manifest into a form of an apple tree or a pear tree or a nice watermelon or whatever it is. And yet, I don't see that intelligence. All I see is the effects of the intelligence. All we see is what? We don't see intelligence. What do we see? We see the effects of intelligence. Therefore, does that now mean that intelligence is not here? No. Just like we see the effects of atoms, it doesn't mean that atoms are not here. In that same way, intelligence is the constituent of all things. And therefore, I relate to intelligence, I relate to forms, and I relate to daily life. So this means that oneness does not mean I skip atoms. Oh, I don't need science. It means I recognize every level. That means nothing is avoided. That's what oneness means. That's why I asked the question at the beginning. What does oneness mean to you? Answer is very simple. Nothing is left out. Do you understand this? Nothing is left out. Otherwise, it's not oneness. It's two-ness now. I'm leaving out atoms. So now there's two things. I'm spiritual and atoms are over there. Two things. That means Satya Mithya allows you to see through and through, understand that even the person who's understanding is also Mithya, resolves into 5 elements, which we will talk about, resolves into intelligence. And what's the truth of intelligence? Awareness, which is known to you right now as this conscious I am. Love, okay, love we will talk about, because love it's got a very specific place in Vedanta, and I want to talk about it a little bit later when I talk about the word Ananda. Although I will say something now, you can interpret love differently. Basically, love can be interpreted as an emotion, okay, which is a very basic human emotion of appreciation, of closeness, of warmth, of connection, of trust. In that sense, it becomes a human emotion. Now, very rarely, which I don't do, in fact, very few teachers will say that love is, self, right? The nature of the self. I don't do that because it tends to be kind of confusing now. Because Westerners love the word love, right? Spirituality is like, oh, it's all love. And I've heard this hundreds of times. Love, you're love, because we all relate. Oh yeah, love. But I like to make things much more tangible than that. Okay? So, summary, where does love belong? It is still Mithya. As I said yesterday in Tattva, in Bhagavad Gita, if Ishvara was love, what would happen? Everything would be love. Dogs would never fight outside because they all love each other. Everyone would love each other constantly because the substance would be love. And then you would have to explain, yeah, but Ishvara is love, then what about evil? Which entity created evil? Now I have to create another Ishvara, another god called devil, who is running the show of evilness. Therefore, you cannot attribute anything onto Ishvara, not even love.
As you said, energy comes under the category of mithya. Okay, so in which context we are talking about? Because science says energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can be just transformed from one form to another. So how does it comes under the category of mithya if it is never created?
Yeah, because it's Ishvara, it's intelligence. Because it can either be, you can't create intelligence nor destroy intelligence. It's just intelligence reshuffling itself. So in that sense, you can't get rid of intelligence because all there is here is intelligence. You can't, what are you going to take out? What? What are you going to take it out into, like a container of emptiness? Suck out intelligence, put it into some other realm? There's only oneness here. And that oneness transforms into both gross matter and subtle matter, which is more of a mind. Or gross matter is how energized you feel, or those subtle experiences of spiritual experiences. All of this is still mithya. Anything that comes and goes, that changes, that's able to shape and shift, it is mithya. Satyam, the final satyam, means that which is non-changing, invariable, ever-present. It just simply doesn't go through any changes. Because awareness remains awareness all throughout. But even intelligence goes through manifest, unmanifest. Manifest, unmanifest. Manifest, that's why you have a seed. You can see intelligence. What kind of state is that intelligence in? Unmanifest. We also call it in science undifferentiated. It's potential. It's in potential, undifferentiated. What happens as the seed starts to grow little by little, little by little? It becomes more differentiated. You see more features starting to come. You come back 10 days later, now you see 100 features that just 10 days ago you did not see. So this means I had to wait 10 days. Time itself is intelligence. I had to wait 10 days worth to see more features. You come back 5 years, now you see a whole world that harbors life, that's intelligently connected to the sun, that's able to absorb our waste product. When our mitochondria takes oxygen produced by which is a waste product for the plants, it's amazing. Something that we need is a waste product for those leaves. We breathe that in, the red blood cell takes that to our cells, the mitochondria takes glucose and mixes that with oxygen, and the waste product that we produce is carbon dioxide, which is food for the plants, and we gain the benefits of energy feeding our body. Look at that connection. Waste product, I need that.
The truth of intelligence is awareness. Can you say some more about that?
The truth of this pot is the clay. The truth of, in other words, the pot has no existence without the clay. In other words, it's a satya-mithya relationship. There's a dependency there. In that same way, intelligence depends on awareness. Why? Because can you have a thought right now without awareness? Can you have a thought without being aware? Okay, I'll put you in a coma. Try having a thought. Okay? There has to be consciousness to have a thought. So in that sense, even Ishvara, which is the total intelligence, reshuffling and reorganizing things to make you, to make this, to make this, to make this, to make this, to make these features, to make this wind, to create the laws so that the wind fan spins and it blows air downwards. The whole thing is within Ishvara, this intelligence. And that's what is being experienced right now. You're experiencing God. It was always experiencing God, nothing else. And yet, owing to lack of knowledge, I thought I was experiencing, oh God, the world, I have to wake up and this and that. All reverentiality is gone. The moment you add Ishvara, your relationship starts to change to everything. I'm no longer relating to a person, I'm relating to Ishvara. In that sense, this takes so much courage to own up. There's no more this, oh, you know, I'm going to hide in my little corner in the room and I'm going to pray to God, which is very safe. I'm going to kind of get away from the world. In the world, because you're not away from this moment, from the next moment. This is the understanding. So to kind of recede from the world and establish oneself in some reality, it's a contradiction. That's why we say one needs to mature up their emotions, become comfortable, become more open, become more sensitive, become more... If one's logic is strong, they have to develop emotions. If one's emotions are snappy, they have to develop logic. If one has a sense of discontent, I need to develop gratitude. If I have a sense of being a me, taker, I have to become a contributor. This is the work. Because this work is all expressions of Ishvara. Who is the ultimate giver in this universe? Give. Ishvara is. So the closer as an individual I get to that giver, the closer I am to Ishvara. And it's not something that you say, I'm now going to give so I can be closer to Ishvara. It's a natural maturity process that happens. Just like detachment, a favorite word in spirituality. Oh, just detach from the world, you know, because I'm wise. It's not something that you consciously choose. Detachment just means, hey, I see it is an object, it can do certain things for me, and it can't do other things for me. I have proper value attribution, without imposing this huge thing on top of a person or lowering them. Therefore, I have a proper objective relationship. What is objectivity? Objectivity means I see the glass half full. No? Half empty? Half full and half empty? Ah, so I see the glass half full and half empty. Why do I see them both? Because you've taken time to think. So as long as I'm seeing this world as half full, what kind of a relationship will I have with the world? Half full relationship, whatever that looks like. Half empty? Well, that's kind of a receding from the world. So the more I see, the more my relationship naturally changes. It's a direct one-to-one correlation between understanding and expression in the world.
But can you then not see the war, for instance, also as the giver from Ishvara? So it's all in balance to take the universe in harmony, like good, bad, war, love. That is all included.
Did you say war?
War.
War, yeah.
Is also the gift from Ishvara.
Okay. I mean, to use the word gift in this context is a little bit shaky.
Intelligence.
Yeah, it is a manifestation. It is facilitated. It is within the laws of Ishvara. And who has contributed? Who has manifested that law? Was it Ishvara kind of, sending from the sky, you're going to now just play out the script? No. Our collective has contributed to that. Our collective. And it's been happening for hundreds of years. We lost values, we lost culture, and that started to wane away. And then we started to no longer pray before eating. And this, then the woman, the 1970s, used to dress modest. Nowadays, they all wear short skirts, which only 30, 50 years ago would have been like a prostitute. And now it's normal to put your legs and show all the skin. You see? And now it's just normalized. Who has contributed to all of this? Now, I don't mean to just target women. I mean, the whole thing, man, woman, the whole thing has changed. You see how slowly it changes, how slowly it becomes normalized. And therefore, it is not Ishvara who's doing this. It is our collective choices that have made this world that we're experiencing now.
One could say maybe the behavior and the choices of an individual, they have to, Ishvara has to give results to that. That's why it's happening.
The results have to come, yeah.
For example, do a bad action, Ishvara has to give the bad result. It's just the law.
Yeah, so the laws have to deliver the unseen consequences. They just have to come out. If not in our generation, they will probably come out when you and I are long gone. Yeah. Now, how long is this going to go on for? See, that's the point. It's never going to stop. When you and I are gone, there will be a new generation who faces the next COVID, the next wars. So the whole point of this is to say, okay, how much longer do I want to do this? See, it's ironic, isn't it? The world is wonderful. But at the same time, you realize that it brings you the same of the same. And it's been going on for a long time. So, you see, it's not a negative or positive thing. It's just discernment. That's all it is.
You just said consciousness. Is that for you the same as awareness?
The word chit in Vedanta can mean either consciousness, not either, but consciousness and or awareness. They're synonymous words. Yeah, some people relate more with consciousness, some with awareness. I'm just going to interchange them.
So going back to the question which Vishal posed earlier about energy.
Yeah.
Like we associate energy with goddess Shakti.
Yeah.
Like Shiva and Shakti.
Yeah.
And you say energy is mithya. So I'm just trying to understand the relation between intelligence and energy.
Okay, sure. But see, I want you to now just think. When I say the word energy, what do you specifically mean by that? Very sensitive. What do you mean? Is it like a sensation in the body? Is it some relationship? What do you mean by that? I want you to make it more tangible.
Energy in the sense from which everything is created. That energy we are talking about.
Yeah, we don't use the word energy. So strictly no word energy, it's mithya. We use the word knowledge, sarvajna, sarvashakti. That shakti, power.
Shakti means energy.
Yeah, but see, energy, I want us to kind of get this right, because in spirituality, the word energy gets kind of all mixed up. So are you talking about, this sarva shakti, or talking about mithya?
But we are not talking in that sense, that of energy raising and not all that. Energy means that Shakti, that Ishvara.
Yeah,
All
but
knowledge, all power.
I get it. Sarvajna, Sarva Shakti, all knowledge, all power. I've studied from many teachers and they've never used the word energy. So I am just following the tradition. Yeah. Okay. So in other words, see, there is some kind of a limiting, to kind of get some words out.
There Sarva Shakti means creating power. You can take like that Maya.
Yeah, the power because of which everything comes, which we're going to get onto. Verse 8. Okay, it says creation, existence, and dissolution in Ishvara. Upadane akila dhare jaganti parameshware. Sargasti tilayan yanti budbudani iva varini. Yeah, so it's a lot of metaphors here, and so I just want to take us through this process again of arriving to the final adhisthana. It's just a revision. I kind of mentioned this. So we said, let's talk about forms. See, to an untrained mind, we see the silver on the shell. That's the beginner of the beginner, right? There's a beach, and I see my own superimposition on the world. And then I act in the light of that superimposition. I see upon you the rope, I see the snake. And I pull back. You're very scary. But I'm pulling back. Are you causing me to pull back? No, you're being who you are, completely yourself. I am, owing to my era, pulling back because of my superimposition onto you. So first step that we have to do is to get clear of those bubbles. The bubbles that we form from teachers, like, it's all energy, or whatever. It's all, you have to kind of meditate and get in touch with some special experience, or you will only gain this after you die. You go to Vaikuntha, and you will sport with Mr. Jesus or Krishna. Okay, this is common. Okay, nothing new. So these notions are all kind of obstacles, because if this notion is implanted in my mind, then I'm not even going to take an interest into the world. The analysis won't even begin. So first step, I have to pop my personal notions, and that happens through life experience. That's why we have to be open in the world, because the world helps you pop your bubbles. Nobody else. I don't see my blind spots. I need you to tell me my blind spots. That's how we are. So the world becomes a blessing. In that sense, it becomes an embellishment. Okay? Therefore, once I pop my bubbles, now I can leave the world alone, because there's nothing wrong with the world. I did not create this world. It's my job to understand the nature of this world. I can only destroy, as far as destroying, that only happens to your bubbles. Can I destroy the world to arrive to oneness? I don't need to touch the world, because through Satya Mithya, we arrive to oneness. So therefore, to arrive to this oneness, can it be done using ordinary perception? Can I see intelligence with my eyes? No. Therefore, we need Shabda Pramana. So once we've popped our bubbles, Shabda Pramana, and the Guru comes and says, hey, let me give you knowledge, knowing which everything at once becomes known. Can you understand why that is so now? How do you at once know everything when you know about the final substratum of all things? How is that?
Everything comes from that.
Everything comes from that. In other words, I may not understand how that tree works. I don't know all of the keywords and the technical words for that, but what do I understand about that tree? It's all intelligence. So no matter what keyword you tell me, it's going to ultimately reduce into intelligence. So now who's more right? The one who is at the level of the keywords, or the one who's at the level of the final building block? Who's more right? It has to be the final building block. Why? Because it is closer to the truth. So when I say, who is more right? Is the pot more right, or is the clay more right? You say clay. Why?
What can be reduced? What can
It cannot be destroyed.
what can be destroyed?
Good, because it's closer to the actuality of what this is. In that sense, the clay becomes more right. That means the clay is closer to the truth of what this is in actuality than the pot. And then when I say, who's more right, the clay or the atom? The atom is more right. Because the actuality of this is just atoms put together under high pressure or whatever they're together, not very high pressure, and I'm actually looking at atoms.
But if someone questions, pot is also real, we can see it.
Yeah, but you see, it's not absolutely real. It is mithya, and you can't call it an illusion. So if I can't call the pot an illusion, and this pot you can apply to anything in this world, can I call this world an illusion? No. I went to this spiritual gathering in near the, I can't remember this, Brunswick in Melbourne. And, you know, they got up on the stage and first thing they said, you know, this Maya is, you know, creating this illusion. I just got, oh no, not again. I've heard this hundreds of times. It's just such a strong thing to use this word illusion with the world. It's not illusion. Otherwise, I'm not interested to deal with illusions now. In fact, the one who says the world is illusion, since that person is made out of the same stuff as the world is, then that person too becomes an illusion. Why should I listen to an illusion then? Okay? Therefore, what I need is Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana to arrive to the final reality. In fact, all spiritual teachings, whether knowest or unbeknowest, are borrowing from Shabda Pramana. All this Western teachings, these partialized systems, which I would love to mention the names because I know probably over 100 of them, but I'm not going to, which talk about non-duality, they are all knowingly or unknowingly borrowing from the Vedas. I've already compared all religions on my website. You can see there's the Advaita Vedanta versus the Titans of Philosophy. Every possible philosophy you will find there, including Course in Miracles and all this stuff I went through, and Neo-Platoism, all forms of Buddhisms, all Kabbalah. You can say that probably it's on that list. I've done an extensive analysis. Advaita Vedanta, I tell you, once you understand the world through, everything else you see is trying to get there, but it's not there yet, including Dzogchen Buddhism. Also, I've studied that. So all of it is trying to get there, but the methodologies are not complete. Therefore, you need Shabda Pramana, which is the complete methodology. And where does Shabda Pramana come from? From the intelligence from which everything else comes from. Therefore, how then is it possible that it comes from Ishvara when it comes from a Rishi? Well, because the Rishi, like Newton is a Rishi. He observed, he got training years before that apple fell. It's not like he's just a random person. He already thought through physics. And he sat under a tree, if that's a true story, I don't know. And then he observed, what is this invisible force that pulls objects downwards? Why downwards, not sideways? And what is it that makes it such a speed? Why is it falling with such a certain speed? And the higher it is, the faster the speed increases. He thought about this. And then he applied additional logics to postulate the presence of this invisible force, which he attached another name to called gravity. Therefore, he then presented this to the science panel, and could they contradict it? No. Therefore, Pramana always has two conditions. Number one, it is non-negatable. Once I discover through the Pramana what it's trying to show me, I can present it to the panel, alternative schools, they cannot negate it, assuming your mind is clear. And second of all, the Pramana has to be unique. It has to be the only means by which certain knowledge is attainable. For example, your ear is a Pramana. Pramana means of knowledge. Is your nose listening to these words? No. Is anything of you listening to these words except your ear? No. Only my ear is the unique pramana. That's what makes the pramana a pramana. And second of all, it has to be non-negatable. That means I can't, through logics, negate it. I can't contradict it. Non-negatable and unique. That's what makes up a pramana. That's why Vedanta has survived through centuries, because multiple schools tried to attack it. Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, Sankhya, Yoga, different forms of Buddhism, they tried to attack it. Vedanta stands true. You can't negate Vedantic wisdom. That's why I proudly teach this.
But maybe not everybody is capable of understanding it. So that's why the other things
Yes.
appear.
Yeah, I mean, we just had a we had a conversation yesterday. You present this to a Dvaitan, right? And they're just not at that level. And I've experienced it myself. You just can't get through. Once an Advaita teacher, highly respected, left a comment on my website, the rope and snake analysis. And this is a respected teacher. The logics that I see from me are like 1 + 1. They're that simple, and yet they're supposed to be the top logics of Dvaita. So this means Advaita Vedanta gets your mind to a much, much higher level. And that's what our minds are made for. Dvaita is just a stepping stone, duality. Vishishta Dvaita is just a stepping stone, but the final, non-contradictable is Advaita Vedanta. So once you come here, as my first teacher said, once you come to Vedanta, if you go out of Vedanta, what do you say? You might as well just ride out your life and just, stop spirituality and restart your reincarnation next time. Start from scratch. There's no backwards. This is the final ending. That's it. Therefore, we can teach this with confidence, and there's no shame teaching this at all, because so much thought has gone into this. And every teacher who does this, they think, they're a thinker. They think, they compare, they constantly get involved in this to make sure there's no loopholes. And Advaita Vedanta also challenges its own notions. Rather than protecting, it's our stuff. No, we're not interested in our stuff. I want to know clarity. Is this true or not? Therefore, it's highly rigorous, and there's no room for error, because it's your life. The stakes are too high, and I can't afford to be following something only to realize when I'm 90 or 80 to go, there was something better. This was just another kind of a sound good system. Can't afford that, because that already happened lifetimes. So it sends you to the final ending. Okay. So this means through means of knowledge, we arrive through forms, we arrive through knowledge or intelligence, and we understand the truth of that intelligence is awareness. This is Satya Mithya. Yes. Did you have a hand up?
Yeah, how about the teachings that are very popular these days, the teachings of the heart? How does that compare to what you just said?
The last verse in Atma Bodha will use the word Hridayam, and it will use the word heart space. And basically, it's a simple verse. It will say that the heart space is basically bringing it down, because a lot of stuff tends to hang out here, and people like to carry that stuff in their intellectual minds. And you can tell who's intellectualizing. So you have to drop it down into your life, into your behavior, into your speech, into how you interact with people, right? Into just generally being more at ease with the world. More at ease with the world. But not sort of like this Lala thing. Intelligence plus ease. That's why we say both intellect and heart have to marry together. Yeah. So this is what I have to say about heart teachings. Otherwise, I'm not sure what specific context you're referring to.
In Dzogchen, the teaching centers very much about the knowledge of the heart, and that is the core of consciousness, and that whole of life,
right,
in a way, begins with the heart.
Got it.
This kind
Got it. I mean, what I'm getting now, if it begins with the heart, then you have to have a genuine, sincere desire, a genuine sincerity in your approach. This is another way I can interpret it. Otherwise, I have to look specifically, what do they mean by heart? And then I can think a little bit more about that.
Say that. What they exactly mean.
Yeah, yeah. You need to look at the context. Yeah, so many meanings can mean heart right now. Yeah. So I'm always careful not to say. Okay. And is this knowledge a belief that we're talking about? Is this intelligence that I'm speaking of? Is it a belief? Is this is a pot? Is clay a belief? Why not? Why is clay not a belief?
Because we can see it.
Because we can infer, we can through analysis come to the substance of this pot. Is atoms a belief? No. Now that's easy because science gave us the answer. But what about intelligence? Is intelligence a belief? Suppose you say, no, that kind of a skeptical no. I will say no, it's not a belief. Why is it not a belief? You have to demonstrate.
Because we can see its effect.
We can see its effects. Okay, so we can see that with intelligence, you cannot find one thing in this world that is not at one of those levels of mithya. It's not intelligently coming together. And you also see that the higher you go up, like a big shell, it's very concrete. And the more you go down, mithya, 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 the smaller and smaller and smaller it gets, it reduces. And even by the quantum physics level, even between a particle and a wave, it becomes very fuzzy relationship. Is it a wave or is it a particle? Okay? So the subtler you go, you see that it is, just more and more and more and more subtle. Until eventually space. Space is even subtler than the smallest of the smallest. So this truth of space is Ishvara. Ishvara is the truth of space also. More on this coming, by the way. This is verse 8. Let's move on. All right, now the next part of verse 8 is it wants to... Okay, actually it says here, just as bubbles form, float, and eventually burst back into the water, this is the verse, the worlds arise, exist, and dissolve in Brahman. So, right, what does this mean? Everything comes out of intelligence, is sustained by intelligence, and goes back into intelligence. Whereas the galaxies, the stars, and everything else is just names and forms of one intelligence. Okay. Now, the next part of verse 8 is I want to analyze Ishvara more specific. Now, what does Ishvara mean? It means cause of the universe. Ishwa, yeah, it's actually a long E. Ishvara. Okay, cause of the universe. Cause. Now, this cause, right, this cause of anything in this universe always has two causes. So when I say cause of this pot, what's involved to make this pot?
Clay and labor.
The material and
Manual.
the maker. The maker. Now the maker has to obviously have the labor, has to have the initiative to make this material and go, let me think and let me create. So any cause of anything in the world has to have a maker, which is called nimitta karanam. If you don't want the Sanskrit words, you don't have to karana. Okay? Maker and the material. Material, which is upadana. These are big words in Vedanta. That's why I'm writing them down. Upadana, karana. So karana is cause, nimitta is efficient cause or the intelligent cause. That's why you're a maker. And upadana is material. Simple? Okay. Now, again, who is now the pot maker? What is the pot maker called? The nimitta karana, right? The maker. And what is the clay called? The upadana karana. The maker, the material, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now, in the real world, where is the maker of this pot? I don't know. No, I mean person, real world. You know. Real world, right?
Around the corner.
Around the corner, right? So we don't see the maker. He could be, actually I go to some Rishikesh, the kids are always throwing pots in there. And then one would sell this for like 20 rupees. I just got one from the river. Yeah. So the maker is somewhere in Rishikesh. But where's the material?
In the book now.
Yeah, I'm holding. So the maker is away and the material is right here with me. So this is the real world. I don't see the maker. Now, let's look at the pot maker. How much knowledge does the pot maker have to have knowledge to create this? Yeah. That's how he created it, or she. So this means the pot maker must have knowledge how to construct this. He has to have knowledge of what a pot means, this shape over here, flat. So in Sanskrit, the logic is ghatasya karta ghatadnyaha. The pot maker has to have knowledge of the pot in order to create the pot. But now, what if you take Ishvara, who is the creator of everything, who is not only the creator of all of the organs and the brain that makes up that pot maker, but also created the minerals and the molecules to create clay, and created the birds and the sky and the fish and your heart and energy and the laws. How much knowledge does that maker have to have? All knowledge. Therefore, sarvasya karta sarvanyaha. Whereas the total maker has to have total knowledge. So this means the maker is now all knowledge. But now, if we take the material, yeah, the pot maker got the material from Rishikesh, the clay. But where did Ishvara get his material from?
Yeah. And what is this material?
We discussed that already yesterday. The nature of the material is intelligence of itself. Because if the material was anything other than intelligence, then it would be everywhere. Just to give you a nice, simple understanding, what is your dream made of? Is there some kind of a special material in your dream that you took out from somewhere, from the waking?
Impressions of the waking state.
Yeah. And
Experience of waking state.
now, isn't it interesting? In your dream, what creates your dream? Your mind. All of the intelligence of your mind constructs your dream. But in the dream, I'm walking and it's a solid world. It's a solid wall. It's a solid pot. It's a solid world. So out of the intelligence in the dream, what gets created? Solid objects. Okay? In that same way, to help you understand, intelligence has a capacity to form itself into the smallest of the smallest of the smallest particle, and then that smallest particle combines with another. Eventually upwards you have something that we can finally observe and we go, wow, here's an atom, proton, neutron. But underneath that atom there's so much more that we haven't yet discovered. In fact, when we were at the level of at the level of the clay a couple of hundreds of years ago, that's where we stopped. And we said, no, there's nothing underneath the clay. The clay is the final thing. Same thing now. We're at the quark, but there's so much more than that we haven't seen. Now, getting back to the question, where did Ishvara get his, if you want to say his material from?
It was always there then.
Excellent, it was always there. Okay, that's nice to say, but you have to apply logic. Suppose the material was somewhere already, somewhere else. Then you have to ask the question, who created that material? Because if this Ishvara requires that material, then there has to be another Ishvara who created that material. But then where did that Ishvara borrow his material from? So it's an infinite regression. Secondly, if the material was already there, what does that look like? There's a whole, like a big space over there. Gold, silver, nickel, iron. And then Ishvara takes a straw and spits it out and produces this universe. You see how crazy now we get into imagination? So the only explanation is that Ishvara is not separate from the material. And we have an example of this. We have the spider analogy, where the spider is both the maker, that means the intelligence. Have you ever seen the spider? Of course, we have seen a spider's web. Amazing. You and I couldn't even do it. We have to borrow that from the spider and then create something that is spider worthy. And the spider also out of itself produces the web. This is an example, classic from Vedanta. So Ishvara is like a spider, both the maker and the material. So now the question is, if you're both the maker and the material, then where is Ishvara right now?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Because where is material not? You're writing with material. Your own body is a material. You're sitting on material. You're breathing material. The whole thing therefore becomes Ishvara. When we say the word Ishvara, what we really mean is one cause of the universe is the maker, the efficient cause, and the material cause. In one word, to save yourself the energy of not having to say efficient cause, material cause, efficient cause, material cause, you just save yourself the energy, couple of kilojoules, and you say Ishvara. So in one word, Ishvara means efficient cause and material cause. Yeah, good, because there's an inherent, we're going to get to this when we get to Maya. It's not created, it's just how it is. Okay, just like your brain has a natural capacity to create the world of the dream. Like, why is it? It's just how it is. So your mind has an amazing ability to project and to create. In that same way, awareness has an ability to manifest forms. But remember, whatever forms are manifest, there's actually no such thing as mithya, because when you ultimately reduce to it, you come to satyam. You see, this thing satya mithya, let's not get confused and start selling the world as mithya, mithya, mithya. That's not the final understanding. This is just a preliminary to get you to satyam. Once I use and practice the satya mithya through my discernment, through my analysis, I can let go of satya mithya, just like the soap nut powder, that example. It's done its job. Now, all that is here is satyam. All that is here is one. That's the final understanding. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.